Welcome to the weekly group discussion for Thread Insights. I am Tiago, I'll be your host for today. And we'll start with highlighting the accomplishments that we always do. And unfortunately, we didn't fill out the list, but we did accomplish plenty of stuff last week.
We jump back to that at the end of the call and I'll have it filled out by the time we get there, Tiago.
Rest assured, we have been working.
I feel like this is where I say, oh, no, I'm going to put you two on the spot. How about we just do this ad hoc?
Yeah, let's do that. Let's do that.
No, do that now. Just give me a couple minutes.
Next on to follow up from previous discussions. Something.
Matt, you maybe want to verbalize that one since Andy's mentioning you. Andy's not here and he's mentioning.
Yeah, I think he's actually out this afternoon. So this is something Andy and I talked about late last week. The long and the short of it is we have been conducting another round of user interviews. We've been doing a lot of discussions with security AppSec professionals outside of GitLab. And one of the things that I'll call it a little bit of a concern on my part and more of a kind of a realization, I think that when we're looking at the work towards viable, there's still the two main personas in that. There's the AppSec side, and then there's the engineering side. I feel like we have more that we still need to shore up on the AppSec side, and we've made really great momentum towards that. I think from the MR perspective, the redesign work, it's still very much valid, but I worry that we may be optimizing a little bit prematurely on that side because we're improving the user experience, which is definitely needed, but we're not changing anything specific to the MR redesign around like some of the data challenges, which are they're related, but they're separate. So the long and the short of it is, I think in the interest of trying to stay a little bit more focused and keeping scope as small as we can for the viable plan, we'd like to look at moving what Andy broke out as steps 2 through 4, which is basically the security tab on the MR redesign, to a later milestone. So just focusing on step 1, which is improving the actual, just a little widget piece itself. So not work that we're going to throw away by any stretch, but I think we want to make sure that that's still necessary and that the timing is correct on that one. So one of the things that we're actually doing at the end of this month or early November is we're doing sort of a light touch pass of the validation for the jobs to be done, which is required. The UX team does a formal evaluation to move the maturity up. So we're getting kind of a litmus test from the AppSec team and then some engineering teams internally to see, is it really going to be required to get us to that next step? Because if the answer is no, then we can defer that work into complete.
Any questions? Going once, going twice. Cool. So we'll continue with the refinement on step 1. And I added the second one, was just a follow-up from the previous discussion on the generic report schema, which we have also started refining. Andy was going to do, on the last call, we talked about doing the proper process for development, which included creating some design. There's an issue there now. I invite everyone to check it out. I'm not going to go through it in detail. We can do that asynchronously, I think, unless anybody wants to. No. Alexander has a question.
Yeah, last time there was talk that the other secure front-end team kind of needed this a lot more than we did. And so they were going to potentially bring on a resource to look at James's work as well. Has there been any progress on that?
That's a great question. And I think they've been focused on other things right now. And I've not gotten an update from Neil. You know, he was sort of asking what are some areas where they could contribute in ways that would remove blockers for secure. And this was one that came up. So to be determined. Let me follow up with you on that, or with everyone on that.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah,
The
good
second question I had was Andy was going to create a design issue. So this, as we talked about last time, this issue and improvement came out of sort of outside of our normal workflow, and it's been sort of hard to prioritize this work with other work because of that. And so Andy made the design. Is that design in a place where I started looking at James's work, and I don't know what I'm comparing it against. Like, I don't know what the requirements are. And so it's like, it feels like a code review, but I don't feel comfortable giving sort of like a high level architecture look if I don't know what we want. And so I was just wondering if the design issue was far enough along to sort of.
It's not, and you're completely right that epic came from a proof of concept from the research team doing what they are here to do. I suppose it's going to happen again. So it's good that we're going through this. We'll figure out a sort of blueprint to handle these in the future. No, the design issue, I've just labeled as workflow design. To be honest, I don't know if I should be doing that, but I did it, Andy. If I shouldn't, my apologies. There isn't a lot there right now. So right there's just a problem statement, and designs are not in there. So sit tight. It sounds like we're not going to be able to start anything on the generic security report in 13.6.
Okay.
Well, I don't want to speak for Andy. I did touch base with him this morning on it. It looks like he hasn't put it into the issue yet, but he said he's got about 80% of the styles ready.
Oh, awesome.
Mostly he's just picking and choosing from existing GitLab style guides in CSS. He needs to double check with James on a couple of things. Like, he's not really sure what a named list is supposed to be. Like, it sounds like it was just I thought it was a numbered list, but no, that's not what it is. And if you look at the example from James, it's kind of a complex type. Like, it's almost like a table, but there are labels and formatting. So anyway, so he needs to actually clarify what the intent of that data structure is before he can move forward. But it should actually be pretty quick. This is mostly just pulling existing styles. So then, Alexander, I think the work is mostly around what has James constructed. Is it able to output something that matches the style guidelines effectively that Andy's going to lay out?
Well, and independent of the styles that Andy's laying out, there's work that it seems that we could be breaking down and refining right now around laying the foundation to make this possible. And I'm assuming that's including some backend work and changes to how we store this data.
Could be, yeah. So I should have clarified when I said that there might be not work on 13.6, I did not mean design work. So design work might actually be finished before, Matt, from what you're saying. And there could be some back-end work there, Lindsay, but Mehmet and Alan are off this week. And there was a bit of a planning faux pas on my part, because if there are no issues refined there, we shouldn't get to it. So if we're happy to get to them through 13.6, that's okay by me. Otherwise, there's plenty of work in the backlog. I've started having a look yesterday, but we digress. The second point, Alexander, did you cover that?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah. That was the second question.
Okay, so it sounds like I will familiarize myself with the code, but not think too hard about it yet.
Moving on to 3, some demos from the sorting that Alan did before he went on leave. The demo for the special references for vulnerabilities. I did add a note that we caused a small bug in there, which Alan fixed before he left. It hasn't been merged yet, I think. I haven't checked it today, but yesterday it hadn't been. So if you try to put an emoji like :+1, which is the thumbs up, it'll render as a vulnerability reference instead of an emoji. So there's that one. And then in parallel, as part of the review of fixing, all the backend engineers have mentioned what we already knew, is that we're running out of special references, and there's a bit of a movement to create scalable special references. So a pattern that scales out, a pattern that we won't run out. We did briefly investigate that for this, Matt. We asked the questions there, but we decided to go with plus because it was there, and you know,
Made a bit of a land grab.
we kind of wanted it.
Although, Tiago, I don't want to derail too much. The IP actually found another variant of a bug with the plus. He pointed out if you're trying to indicate like an increase in a number, like that added plus 48, it's also turning those into vulnerability references. In fact, his example was plus 48 point something.
Well, it's actually on every single one of our MRs with the size increase. It shows a plus 47 dot blah, blah, blah. And it's just the plus 47 that's hyperlinked. I created a separate bug for that because the one you'd written, Tiago, was so specific to emojis. So I linked to it.
Yeah, I didn't know about this one. So I'm starting to see why the iterations didn't use that. They consider using plus and they went with something else. So we'll see what happens, Matt.
Do we need to keep pushing forward with this? I'm worried that pattern matching is going to be impossible because we won't be able to distinguish between an integer and a low ID vulnerability if we start at 1. But if we start the vulns at a 5-digit number, maybe less so, we could actually validate. But I guess the question is, should we throw the brakes on it now and look at a different pattern that's less likely to collide and be unfixable once it's in the wild?
Oh, it's in the wild now, right? Oh, you mean for 13.5?
Yeah,
because it's live now in .com. I don't know. We could be playing Guacamole on it for a while.
That's what I'm worried about. It seems like there's more and more edge cases I think we're going to find than we were able to think of, which was basically none when we did this. So.
I don't know the answer. So if you want to take a chance on it as product, it's your call, Matt. But if you want to pull the brakes, and we could wrap that in a feature toggle, maybe that's something we can do quickly before 13.5 is out.
Yeah, maybe we should have a specific follow-up on this and involve a little bit more cross-stage input as well, because I am worried there's going to be use cases that we're not thinking of that are going to materially impact workflows for people that maybe aren't even using vulnerability management, which is going to confuse the hell out of them if it's hyperlinking things to vulnerabilities and they're like, but what is this? I don't even use scanning. So yeah, I'm concerned enough at this point.
I'll take an action. My initial idea is then to see if we can put a feature toggle around all of it. So we can still, if we want to experiment with it, we can do it in a controlled fashion. And if we don't, then we can dial back and focus on using the scalable way of creating references.
Yeah, I like that, because once it goes live with 13.5, it's kind of there for forever until then we have to go and deprecate it and all that.
All right, cool.
That tricky stuff.
All right. Up next, issues for planning breakdown. I added a lot of these yesterday. I don't think there were any in there, so maybe not everybody has had time to review them.
And I reordered a bit. I know, Matt, you'd added item B and C there around the conversations we had today, but item A was for step 1. It's one of the issues we put in the epic for step 1 of the MR redesign work. So I know it was on the list before, so I just moved it up because I know it's something that we were looking at doing fairly immediately. And my first question was, we've got a larger effort around breaking down this epic for the step 1 of the MR widget redesign. And we kind of just shoved this issue that is linked to here in number 1 under that epic, which is, I don't know if it makes sense. We've asked people to go and do the planning breakdown for the epics that are associated with this larger MVC. And as this issue was created, it was identified after the fact. I think Andy said, hey, we've already covered these error use cases and the design steps for this larger design issue. So just because it made sense and we didn't want to lose it, we just kind of shoved it under that epic. So we can keep this one open. Daniel, you're on the call, and you helped kind of create the one implementation issue that was under step 1 for this larger epic. Did you notice that this particular error case issue was there when you did that?
This particular.
Yeah. So if you, yeah, this show a warning message telling users to rerun pipeline. That's one of the error conditions that we're being asked to cover in step 1 of the MR widget redesign. So I don't know if it was totally clear, even when you were looking at that epic, that, hey, some of these requirements are already represented by this one issue that's there. So if we do keep this issue, maybe we want to make it a little more broad and say, hey, this issue represents a number of these error cases, or maybe we blow it out altogether and say, let the engineers break this down just from the initial requirements.
Yeah, maybe we'll do that.
The latter?
The latter, yeah.
Okay. So Daniel, my second question is that you created one implementation issue off this larger epic. And I would like to get a second opinion or get some other insights into whether that should be more than one issue.
Okay, like not from me though, right?
Yeah, but I'm looking, I know, Mo's here. We've got no one else on the backend team here. So maybe this is something we can handle asynchronously. Tiago, I know you guys, there's folks out on the backend team this week. If there's somebody that has some time, given that we're trying to get this ready for 13.6, to take a look at the issue that Daniel created and see, one or more backend issues that might need to be spun off of that.
Yeah, Michal comes up in a few hours, so we can ask him.
Okay, I can take the action to mention Michal and say,
oh yes, please.
I'm on it. Cool.
Yeah.
So I'll take the 2 actions. I will both remove this show a warning message issue, like Daniel just suggested, and then ask Michal to sort of organically create those backend implementation issues that would coincide with what Daniel has defined for the front end.
Cool. Anything else on that? Matt, anything to add?
Yeah, just a clarification, Tiago, to your comment. When you're talking about scoping to the target versus source branch or other use cases, are you talking about other use cases on the time diff or just error cases
In general, yeah.
Ah, okay. I would say discretion of the team. I think it makes sense to cut it wherever as small as possible. I'm fine having just one error case since we're adding the new, I guess, the element to contain errors in general. And if we want to add additional as separate issues, I think that's a great incremental approach.
Cool. We'll keep it like that.
Or if they're easy, we can just add them all at once or get through as many as you can. But yeah, I'm happy with just one at a time.
All right.
Lindsay, I want to say on behalf of Backhead, I hear you, but I don't know the answers yet. I'm just catching up.
Mo, we're so happy to have you here. I forgive you.
Thank you.
Item B, bulk update for security dashboard. Let's see who had a chance to have a look at this. Looking for carrots. Lindsay, you had a look at it.
Bit of a late ad and a cheat on her part because we talked about it 2 hours ago in our one-on-one.
That's okay, because she gets to talk about it.
Search down, it was on the agenda before, but it came to us as an early glimpse of a design issue from Andy. So I do think that this has been something that's been brought up on this agenda before, and there's been some other questions, not just from myself. I think Daniel had some part in the conversation on this one as well. So I think the questions that I were asking around, well, what happens if you try and update the status of an issue to its existing status, right? If something's already dismissed and you, as part of the bulk options you select, try and dismiss it again. Are we keeping that as a record? Or are we ignoring it? I think Andy says we want to keep that as a record. I'm trying to remember what some of the other questions were, but I can go out there after. Yeah, let's go see. So this is just really building on our existing bulk dismissals, but allowing us the ability to do other state changes.
It's the other state changes. It does three major things. It builds on the state change today for the bulk action. It adds in the ability to actually comment in line when you're doing that from the main vulnerability list. And then it also brings that consistency to the vulnerability details page. So right now there's an inconsistency between the state changes. So same thing, same options both places, and we will persist all of that information, including the reason. So
Okay, so it also,
go
I'm sorry, so what I missed there, when just to confirm what you just said, Matt, in addition to adding this bulk feature to the dashboard, it also adds more dismissal reasons to the individual vulnerability detail page?
It's going to bring it in line with that. Because right now you can pick reasons from the individual details page.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's, so the, again, in talking with Andy, this isn't 100% done, but the design is very, very close. Really, the main thing that's a little bit outstanding is trying to make sure that we've got the right reasons and statuses and reasons buttoned up so that we're not missing a state or we haven't classified something in a way that doesn't resonate with the AppSec team.
And if I may ask a question, on the vulnerability details page, when you dismiss something, is it on the vulnerability? No, wait.
We don't display it anywhere. There's nowhere today that you can see your dismissal reason.
Right, but on the, on the reports page, the vulnerability reports, when you dismiss something, you can choose between 3 reasons that you're dismissing it, and now you're doing freeform here.
No, it is actually, when you hit dismiss, it asks you to pick a specific reason and you can put a freeform comment in.
I see. Is there, okay, never mind.
Do we have another issue to add that freeform or I guess the comments into the vulnerability details page?
That's it.
I want to say that yes, there is, if it's not linked there already. I think it's the dismissal types reasons one. Because if not, then that is the intent it's to bring, normalize the reasons and the status changes between both of those pages and also persist it. So I think it was Alexander, you observed that it doesn't seem to show the dismissal reasons. And that's because I don't think we're actually persisting those. So I know some of the scanner teams have been looking into those because they want to see like what's a false positive. And it turns out like, no, you get to pick a thing and it goes away. So yes, we absolutely want to make that the same in both places.
Yeah, because on the details page right now, you can dismiss, but you can't choose a reason you're dismissing. So There's got to be another issue to add that just to the details page. And then in addition, add the freeform field. Okay, cool.
So if it doesn't exist today, it sounds like we need at least 1, but maybe 2 more issues specific to the details page. 1 to add the additional reasons, and the other to display the comments. We'll check with Andy before we go around and create those, but that makes sense.
I think I saw actually Savash working on a split button thing. I can verify whether that does anything for the dismissal reason.
Well, James Johnson created a POC because he's so good at that, that you can see linked to from this bulk dismissal that was adding that dismissal reason to the details page. And I think Andy was still kind of in the solution validation piece of it. So we do have that code there available to however we decide to integrate it. It was exactly that. That might have been what you're thinking of.
Yeah, yeah, it was. Thank you. Merge it.
I missed Daniel's question. I added the answer. If somebody knows what the question was, please add it for me in the minutes. Thank you. We're actually at time, but if we want to do another one and forfeit the fast meeting time, we can do that.